Imagine you're living an unbothered life, and you suddenly receive a notice that what is awaiting you 8 years into the future is utter destruction.
This is the reality of Hirasawa Kazuki. He is an ordinary Japanese university student that you can find anywhere.
There is nothing special about him, and he has no particularly redeeming qualities. So why is it that he is standing in front of a peculiar mirror that is trying to pull him into an unknown realm? The scenery in front of him suddenly changes and his worst nightmare turns into reality. He analyzes his surroundings and deduces that he is standing in a royal house. Something about the sight of a maid getting ruthlessly beaten seems oddly familiar to him.
That's when he realizes.
This is a scenario from a game called Brave Hearts. It is a stereotypical fantasy RPG where the protagonist, Liner, stops an evil scheme that could have led to the destruction of the world. Hirasawa admits that the game is so immersive that he has lost track of how many times he has played it. He practically memorized all the lines in the events, and that is why he's sure that the person standing beside him is Hayden, the head of the Stokes family. Other members present in the room are Jessica, Hayden's wife, and Clara, their servant. Hirasawa knows everyone and everything that is going on around him, so nothing seems unfamiliar to him. But this fact still doesn't comfort him at all. The question that keeps bothering him is where he was and what he did right before he ended up here.
There is another reason why he's so worried right now.
As far as he can recall, what is about to unfold in front of his eyes is the most depressing event in the entire game. In the Brave Hearts game, this is one of the flashback events where the mother of the main heroine, Clara, is executed by the oldest son of the Stokes family, Harold. But the question is, where is Harold? Hirasawa's memory tells him that, in this scene, Harold should be in the arms of his worried mother. Suddenly, Jessica's hands on his head and shoulders start making sense to him. He looks up at her and she seems to be glaring at Clara. He tells himself that this can't be true. He rudely pushes Jessica away, but she just smiles in return. Then she said something, which pierced through his heart like a bullet. She refers to him as Harold and tells him that there is no need to worry anymore. Hayden, Harold's dad, grabs his sword and is about to decapitate Clara, when Hirasawa, aka Harold, stops him. With a smile on his face, he requests his father to allow him the pleasure of executing her.
It's like Hirasawa has absolutely no control over Harold's body. It moves and says things on its own.
He claims that he has learned this new magic recently and would like to make Clara her training dummy instead of allowing her to stay in the room with her inferior blood. His father is proud of his response and orders Clara to be thrown into the dungeon. It looks like Clara is a half-breed and her kind is really hated in the community because they are considered inferior. The voices get muffled for Hirasawa and he's having a hard time accepting that he is in the body of Harold Stokes, the most hated character in the game, due to his heinous and arrogant nature.
That's not even the worst part. Harold is doomed to die at the hands of the last boss, but is he even capable of changing that fate?
His body and his tongue move on their own, just like what happens in every Brave Hearts gameplay.
Hirasawa meets his butler, Norman.
As far as he remembers, out of all of the characters, Norman is considered the most sensible. He asks Harold, aka Hirasawa, if he's feeling alright and needs his help. Harold, being the snob that he is, disregards Norman. Still, the butler requests him to lighten the punishment of Clara, whose life or death depends on Harold's decision. According to the story, Clara is incinerated to death by Harold's magic.
Having no more relatives, Clara's daughter Colette gets kicked out of Stokes' territory.
From that point onwards, the protagonist, Liner, and his family take care of her. Hirasawa knows that if he rescues Clara, he will deviate from the original story where he eventually encounters Liner. He decides to use Harold in such a way that will help him in avoiding death flags.
However, he also knows that he can't make huge deviations from the storyline.
This way, he might end up dying from a development, which doesn't even exist in the storyline. He wants to tell Norman that he wants to save Clara, but Harold's body only gives a bratty response, which only earns him more hate points. There's a high possibility that if he dies here, he might never be able to return to the real world.
Hirasawa knows better than to cry over spilled milk.
He gets up and starts reading every book he can find in Harold's room. The only thing he can do now is gain as much knowledge about the world as he can.
Hirasawa is led to the dungeon by one of his knights.
He orders him to guard the entrance. The receptionist is caught lacking, and he's shocked to see Harold-sama in the dungeon himself.
However, Hirasawa doesn't respond and makes his way downstairs. He asks Clara about her daughter and confirms if all the information he remembers is correct or not.
She affirms that Colette is her only daughter, and her husband died of an illness 3 years ago. When Clara begs him to spare her life, Hirasawa feels like bawling his eyes out. But Harold, the spoiled brat, cusses at her and leaves.
Still, Hirasawa has started to make some progress, and he's proud of that. He arranges a meeting with Norman, who brings a map of Stokes' territory with all the information regarding settlements located in the territory. When Hirasawa asks how he plans on saving the servant, Norman responds that the best option is to relocate her outside of Stokes' territory. Hirasawa calculates that to pursue this plan, they will need to get some laborers and taxpayers on their side. For Harold, this is no biggie, and Hirasawa is planning to use that to his advantage. Norman recommends that they should help her in fleeing to the Blowish village. Hirasawa knows that this is where the Liner family lives. If they were to follow through with this plan, Harold would be doing something good in this timeline, and the original story of Colette and Liner meeting would still be preserved. Norman suggests that it would be impossible for Clara and her daughter to survive with zero possessions in an unfamiliar land. Hirasawa analyzes and writes down everything Clara and Colette might need on their journey. Norman is shocked to see this caring side of Harold. He is even shocked to realize that Harold is familiar with and concerned about Clara's daughter. Norman is an intelligent character. He quickly deduces that something is up, and Harold is not acting like himself. He believes that Harold claimed to use Clara as his magic test subject, just so she could be isolated in a secure location. In his eyes, all this time Harold has been trying his best to save Clara. This pumps him up to give the mission his best shot for Harold's sake. Norman believes that it doesn't matter who the person inside Harold is. He just knows that he is the last ray of hope to change the Stokes family for the better. The next day, Hirasawa finds an abandoned place and practices magic. His jaw drops to the floor when he sees flames emerging from his hand. Although he admits that the chanting part is very embarrassing, he is still getting hyped up. He knows that what he's capable of doing right now is nothing compared to Harold's magic ability in the game. Right now, Hirasawa has two aims in mind. He wants to allow Clara to escape, but he also wants to make it look like she was burned to death by his flames. He is extra careful right now because this isn't a game anymore, and Clara isn't just some pixels on the screen. She is a real human being that he must save. Failure is not an option for him. He plans to carry out his mission that night. The sun has set, and the sky is taken over by a blanket of stars. It's time for Hirasawa to carry out his mission. With the help of Norman, he takes Clara to her daughter, Colette. He tells them that they only have two options. One is to die, and the other is to leave the place and sever ties with anyone they've ever known. It is interesting to see that Hirasawa is still speaking in Harold's arrogant tone. He claims that it would be much easier for him to just kill off both of them. For some reason, Colette seems to be blushing a lot. In the original storyline, she was supposed to meet Liner first, but in this timeline, she is meeting Harold first. He rolls his eyes and gives Colette a necklace, and makes her promise that she will never take it off. Hirasawa tells her to give the necklace to a man who is her age and is willing to protect her. Colette obviously has no clue what is going on. Harold summons his guard and tells him to bring the wagon for Clara and her daughter. He warns them that if anything were to find out or if the plan was to fail, everyone's life would become non-existent. After everyone leaves at his order, Hirasawa tries to recall how Clara had gotten on Stokes' hit list in the first place. Apparently, Harold was the cause of all the commotion. He bumped into her while she was watering a flower bed and got all muddy after falling down. It was such a stupid incident that Hirasawa feels embarrassed for being Harold. He shakes his head and prepares himself for his final duty. Meanwhile, Norman is walking away while thinking about Harold's new calm, gentle, and caring demeanor. Suddenly, a loud noise stops him in his tracks. Harold starts laughing out loud like a maniac and starts saying dialogues from his original storyline. He uses his magic spell to destroy the entire forest. Soon, Hirasawa takes over and realizes that he automatically adopts behavior from the original timeline. He takes a breath of relief with the assumption that Norman has already left. He wouldn't want anyone to see him laughing and talking to himself about Clara like an ultimate sadist. He turns around to find that Norman is still standing there. He makes his butler swear that he will take whatever he just saw to his grave. Norman just assumes that Harold is mentally ill and doesn't want anyone to find out. He assumes that Harold is mentally ill because he has always persisted with a lonely battle as he treats his true parents like poor role models. The guards were commanded to leave Clara and Colette on the Blosh village and have one soldier take the wagon to Leeds. He had also ordered the guards to give Clara some gold coins, which he took from his severance pay. Back in the present, Clara smiles as she catches glimpses of her new village. The sun rises and so does her hope for freedom. And this is all thanks to Hirasawa. Harold is having a business meeting with Norman, Zen, and his financial advisor.
He shows him a copy of the statement of revenues and expenses that he drafted. He asks him if there are any major errors in the statement. He looks confused and goes through the document again. The advisor reaffirms his stance that there are in fact no errors in it. Harold starts laughing as if trying to mock him. He reassures him that he didn't call him to cause trouble or anything. When he doesn't give a response, he explains that for the last few years, the Stokes family finances have been sinking into the red. The biggest reason is his parents' extravagant lifestyle. They have been using the family's inheritance and the taxes to compensate for that, but that too will not be able to last. As a result, it is an increasing burden on the citizens. The financial advisor agrees by stating that people who had to close down their farms due to financial difficulty have also been increasing. Harold declares that this is a state of emergency, and at this rate, eventually, the Stokes family will collapse. In order to prevent bankruptcy, Harold suggests increasing returns from the agricultural sector. Jake is also the inspector of the agriculture sector, and this is why he has been summoned. Harold signals Zen, who has been desperately waiting for his time to shine. He energetically brings Jake a basket of potatoes that are referred to as Red Groot. As soon as Jake tastes it, he is left starstruck. For some reason, Zen feels very proud of that. Harold explains that this is a crop he raised using a proprietary technique and he needs Jake's help to take it one step further, because he is familiar with the Stokes family finances and lands. With a devilish smile on his face, Harold explains that for his heroic cause, Jake might even anger Hayden, the head of Stokes, and the worst case is that he might even get thrown into the dungeon. Jake is surprised to see how Harold is able to say such stuff lightheartedly. When Jake doesn't refuse, Harold explains the entire LP farming process in which life potions are injected into the crops. He plans to share this with several farmers and begin testing it on portions of fields. The businesses he is planning will be small scale. If successful, he wants to limit the spread of economic disparity between farmers as much as possible. With Red Groot, it usually takes 2 months to be ready for harvest, but by using the LP farming method, it can bear fruit in just a week. Jake is shocked to hear this news. The only problem is that cheap high-quality goods would disrupt the market, crushing the farmers outside of Stokes' territory. If his father, who adores the money, were to catch wind of this, he knows for a fact that he will try to monopolize it. At the end of his speech, Harold stares at his audience and asks them if they enjoy giving stupid looks, or if they were just born that way. Jake admits that he is just caught off guard by all the details he is suddenly sharing. He reminds his squad that he needs advice if something feels a little off. Jake fixes his glasses and comments that Harold was able to discover a groundbreaking cultivation method that surpasses history at such a young age. Norman thinks to himself that Harold doesn't have greed for money or greed and is set on his strong feelings of starving to help the people. He asks his squad if they are willing to become his arms and legs. The Sudara in him kicks in and he claims that if the people don't accept what he is going to propose, then they are just going to die because they are weak. Over the dinner table, Harold's family discusses Harold's marriage partner. They discuss Sumerajai's daughter, and Hirasawa recalls that there was one such character in the original game as well. He realizes that the Miyazama atmosphere must be causing trouble to the Sumerajai, and another light bulb lit up in his megamind. He wants Sumerajai's head, Tatsuki, a compassionate man, to be on his side so he can avoid more death flags. Sometime later, he pays them a visit and meets Erika, the girl who will soon become Liner's comrade and the one he should be most cautious about. Now that things have changed, marrying can be troublesome and can prevent her from meeting Liner and becoming a healer for his party. Even if Hirasawa avoids every death flag, if he can't beat the last boss and the world gets destroyed, everything will be meaningless anyway. He wants Erika to think positively of him, but he doesn't want to overdo it. Tatsuki introduces Harold to his wife and his daughter. Hirasawa is anxious that Harold's mouth might just say something arrogant, but surprisingly he respectfully addresses everyone. However, he notices that Erika looks blank. Everyone leaves the duo to spend some time alone, and Hirasawa braces himself for the do-or-die situation. Erika and Harold are left alone to talk for a bit, therefore they take a walk around the garden where she introduces herself again. Either she is too polite or she is quite nervous to actually strike up a conversation. Harold tries to match her level of politeness when she spots the cherry blossom tree and shows it to him, revealing that it bears the flower that represents the Sumerajai family. She has a whole story up her sleeve regarding this as well and begins to narrate. Starting off 500 years ago, the feudal lord apparently moved to this exact place and bought some seedlings with him, turning it into the symbol of the Sumerajai family. This is certainly different from the cherry blossom that Harold is acquainted with, shocking the young girl because she had no idea that he bothers himself with such information. Well, he explains the chances of the other cherry blossoms being a possible look-alike. Anyway, he doesn't care about something like this, so there's no point in thinking about it too much. Erika misunderstands his point, asking if this means that he's not interested in her family. Her question catches Harold off guard for a bit, even though he is fully aware that she is flawless with her conversations. He has no choice but to tell her to continue making her interpretations, even though he just wanted to change the topic. His response isn't satisfactory to the young girl, who doesn't like him much already, and she has started believing that the boy only wants her family's surname. It might be better for her to hate him with all her heart though, so Harold gets the idea to use some more vulgar lines like this. He mentions that he doesn't need her family's name because his own lineage has noble blood. Plus, her family is the one who came to the Stokes, pitifully crying about their decreasing finances, which surely puts her in the inferior position. His words turn her expression into the scariest one he has ever seen, making him wonder if he has gone too far with his insults. If he continues down this path, then he will surely stay away from his original goal. In order to cause some distractions, he takes out an envelope from his pocket and gives it to the furious girl in front of him, who probably doesn't even want to look at his face for long. He asking her to give the envelope to her father. He is still waiting for her to take the envelope when she directly refuses to do anything for him. Thankfully, Harold knows how to get the job done, as he mentions her suffering people dying if she doesn't deliver this letter. Erica considers his words for a few minutes, contemplating if she has anything to lose by listening to him. She is aware that she can't exactly trust him, but takes the letter when he mentions that she can decide to trust him when she has seen the results. This sounds like a fair enough deal. Soon enough, Harold returns back home to be welcomed by Norman, who asks him to rest after his long trip. Well, Harold has no time for his concern, as he immediately jumps to business, inquiring about LP farming methods progress. It turns out that Norman has already explained it to the farmers, and his team has even managed to secure usable fields without any issue as well. It looks like they can begin trial in the next 10 days, therefore Harold asks him to continue listening to Jake, who has the brains for this entire scheme. He is surely glad that things seem to be progressing smoothly, with Norman conducting himself well behind the scenes. The good news is that his parents don't suspect anything yet, therefore it'll be fine to observe the Sumeragi family's circumstances for now. He knows that Erica would never disregard a chance to save her people who are suffering from miasma, and she will definitely hand the letter to Tasuku. The contents of the letter contain the compound item used to make antibiotics, and the range of the miasma contamination which he had estimated from a dungeon map, which might not solve the actual issue though. At any rate, this issue will surely motivate Erica to become the protagonist's ally. The main question is if Tasuku will actually trust the contents of some stupid letter written by a 10-year-old, and then make antibiotics as he planned out. He will have to come up with another way to approach her father if this little plan fails, while Erica taking the letter is enough for him currently. A few days later, Harold is training with a soldier who doesn't seem to take him seriously, which angers Harold to the next level. He ends up watching the soldier collapse in fear before even picking up his sword, concluding that it was a mistake to ask him to be an instructor after all. Of course, they are all scared of hurting him and getting punished by his father, so it all makes sense. He is worried about his combat techniques when Norman shows up to announce that he has a guest, and it seems like Erica has decided to pay him a visit. Harold immediately walks towards the visitor's waiting area, thinking about all the possible obvious that he's quite nervous about seeing her. The second he enters, the reason behind her visit is the first question he asks, which sounds a bit rude when a noble has a guest. Erica expected him to apologize for keeping her waiting, but it looks like it's a day of disappointments. Well, Harold surely believes that she should be thankful that he took out some time to meet her, making the girl agree that it is certainly her fault for showing up all of a sudden. She cuts to the chase, starting off with her expression of gratitude on behalf of her family as they have managed to save many of their citizens because of his letter. It's obvious that her father works a lot faster than Harold expected, but he maintains his arrogant personality in front of her, making some taunts about her family jumping at something like bootleg. Unfortunately, Erica maintains her composure even when he mentions some sort of compensation for his generosity. Plus, he tells her that the letter only contained a makeshift remedy, which can't serve as a fundamental solution and there might be side effects as well. It surely won't work on those with a serious condition, and he doesn't plan on caring for her people that much since he already has done enough. Erica agrees that his thought process is only natural because they were engaged for political reasons. As long as they grant her family some honor, the Stokes family would surely maintain face. However, she still can't stop thinking about how Harold went out of his way to help them out. It's still unbelievable that he made this medicine in such a short time, making her wonder about when exactly he decided to develop it. It's weird that he could achieve something that her family couldn't solve for such a long time, and reveals a letter that her father has sent for Harold. He begins reading the letter without even wasting a second, and it looks like Tasuku has expressed his sincere gratitude in at least 6 different ways. Updating him on the progress of the patients, he finally has a special request as he asks Harold to take care of Erica at the Stokes estate for the time being, while their family deals with these issues back home. It seems like Erika had no clue about her father's little request, agreeing that it will be a major inconvenience to Harold if she lives with him under the same roof. Anyhow, the coach she was sent here on has already returned though, and her only choice is to rely on his benevolence. Her smart reply makes Harold smile as he knows that she has got guts, but he declares that there is nothing honorable in fulfilling a one-sided request like this. This surely makes him look like a cold person who doesn't care about his fiancée. Therefore Erika prepares to leave after he complains about not being repaid well. Her awfully quick exit starts getting him worried though, and soon he is rolling through the town in the Stokes family coach. It is revealed that a few hours after Erika left his house, Harold's father informed him that Erika will be staying with them for a few weeks. Since it was his father's order, he couldn't possibly refuse, right? This bad feeling totally hit the nail on the head, fully aware that his letter has caused the dramatic change from the original story. He also reaches to pick her up by this time, where Erika introduces her attendant, as well. This new character is even more doubtful for him, making him decide that he will completely ignore these two and just let things pass by, instructing them to mind their own business. But his father has his own plans as he starts announcing his fiancée's arrival throughout their mansion. This public humiliation is too much for him to handle when Hayden gives him the responsibility of showing Erika around town the next day as well. He clearly had no choice but to get involved with her. A letter from Harold has arrived at the Sumeragi estate, which is quite suspicious for Tasuku, even though he believes that the Stokes family has nothing to gain since this letter hits towards their family's decline. This surely makes him wonder if someone else is pulling the strings, since nobody can imagine that this letter was written by that boy himself. The question is, who is the author of this letter? And it's clear that it might not be someone who wants to help the Sumeragi family out. It can possibly be someone close to the Stokes family who is willing to provide something Harold desires, or they have surely hypnotized the poor boy. Another way to look at it might be that it's a way to test the Sumeragi family, which doesn't make sense because they are already in a lot of trouble as of now. This indicates a strong possibility of the letter being truthful. Therefore Tasuku asks Kiryu to prepare the necessities at once, which will be used by the volunteers soon enough. Back at the Stokes mansion, it's dinner time, and it looks like their new guests are enjoying the delicious meal with the entire family. While Harold maintains a miserable expression, his mother immediately gets up to check for a fever, making him blush for being treated like a child in front of the guests. His parents share a laugh at his reaction when Harold turns the tables on them, mentioning that they should be the ones who are embarrassed for being such a lovey-dovey couple in front of their son. There is an awkward silence at the table, but they manage to get through this dinner soon. Back at her room, Erika mentions that her father thinks that Harold might be connected or is being used by them even though he doesn't look like someone who can be controlled by anyone else. Even though she hasn't found concrete proof against him, she knows that they need to get him to clarify this threat once and for all. At this point, Yuno is revealed to be a detective who is about to go find some clues about Harold's involvement. Apparently, Tasuku ordered Erika to rattle him during the day as well, but it didn't provide any results to them. Does this mean that he's being used as a puppet by someone? This investigation is surely going to take a bit of effort in order to uncover if there was any funny business going on around this mansion. Yunho has been going around town collecting information about the Stokes family who were quite arrogant, take profits from the commoners by taxes to fund their military, and nobody can start a riot because they will be killed for sure. This information is shocking for the detective until a strange guy whispers some information about Harold and her hair, which is a bit shocking for her. On the other hand, Harold and Erika are taking a tour of the town as well, even though he isn't quite familiar with the area yet. They go over to a shop where he buys a little token for the girl with him, which seemingly makes her cheeks turn red. He is aware that she has ignored the rumors about him killing Clara, but he is still hoping that she hates him spectacularly. This is when he thinks about Clara and Colette's safety, and his parents' anger if they ever find out that he is protecting them. They return home soon, where Harold takes a meeting with Jack who confirms that all 6 locations are undergoing favorable growth. The harvest might be according to expectations, which makes the boys suggest some possible expansions. Unfortunately, they lack the manpower for the expansions, even though Norman suggests that they can employ Arius and sex citizen specters. This suggestion might not be realistic, therefore Harold starts thinking about hiring people from the outside. For now, Jack needs to finish his report, so he continues to tell him that they have not witnessed any effect from the use of life potions. Plus, the chefs haven't reported any differences in tastes either, which doesn't sound like a bad report, but Harold still thinks that they aren't doing enough tests to make good judgments, instructing him to continue monitoring the progress. Meanwhile, Yuno has also returned from the town with her own report about the Stokes family, informing that her in-laws are quite unpopular among the citizens. She also shares the information about Harold, revealing that it seems like he used magic to burn Clara and Colette to ashes. This information is devastating for Erica, even though she knows about the ray of hope that he has found for her people. She is still in shock when Yuno promises to continue spying on him, instructing her to avoid being alone with Harold because they never know what he might do. The servants are gossiping about Erica being unwell since the day she went out with Harold. On the other hand, the boy is busy practicing his swordsmanship in the forest that he used during the Clara rescue operation. He can freely swing his blade, which makes him feel free, practicing the swift lightning technique a couple of times. Unfortunately, he still doesn't think that his magic is good enough, even though it's just newbie magic. But he's nowhere near a match for Harold in the original story. This is really unacceptable for him as he wants to match the person's strength in the game. Therefore he continues with his special training. He has no idea that Yuno has been watching him from a distance, and she has clearly witnessed something dreadful as she knows that he must be hiding a dreadful secret if he can't use sword techniques mixed with magic. The only way to find out if that's risky for them is to confront him. However, she might not survive if he decides to bare his fangs at her. Deciding that she doesn't stand a chance against him, the detective turns to leave so she can come back later. Before she can leave though, a sword passes right by her, and it looks like she has been discovered by Harold after all. She has no idea if she should run because he might have seen through her spying activities, and she probably can't lie her way out of this one, right? It seems like the sword slipped from Harold's hands by mistake, and he is scared that he has hurt the mysterious person so much that they can't move at all. Getting a bit closer, he discovers that it's Yuno, who immediately apologizes for peeping on him. Harold knows that there's nothing interesting about watching a kid play with a sword, but she doesn't seem to be hurt, so it's a relief. He advises her against looking around in the shadows, which makes her smile for not being discovered, but it's clearly a warning for her to stay away in the future too. She is clearly worried about being able to protect Erica at this rate because the boy in front of her had plenty of party and abilities. He doesn't sound like a puppet at all, and it feels like an utter defeat for the poor detective. Finishing the topic, Harold inquires about Erica, suggesting that she should probably return home if she's feeling so homesick. Yuno wishes that he would be kind towards his fiancée when he clearly spells out that he doesn't intend on being tied down by this relationship at all. Realizing that he has said too much, he leaves Yuno at her spot, but still thinks about how suspicious it is that Erica is still feeling so sick. There's something deeper behind her grief, and it looks like he's determined to find out what it is. Harold realizes that he left his sword back in the woods, hoping that Yuno doesn't take it, and runs to bring it back before it gets too dark. At this point, he spots Erica walking in the gardens, which makes him wonder if she's fine enough to move now. Maybe he should try taking her back to her room, therefore he moves closer to her. Instead of inquiring about her health with kindness, he ends up insulting her, which makes him feel bad because she doesn't even reply to him, revealing that she can't be honest with him because she doesn't like him too much. Erica keeps standing firm on the ground without even blinking her eyes. Her reply makes him turn to leave until she stops him, finally asking if the rumors about him magically burning a servant are true. Deciding to clear up this misunderstanding, he lets her know that he killed his servant and her daughter because it doesn't make a difference, no matter how many servants he kills. The poor girl is left speechless while he continues to laugh about the murders he has done, mentioning that it's their fault for being born that way. His insensitive words are clearly too much to handle for Erica, who slaps him hard, accusing him of being the worst human ever before turning to leave. Later, Harold locks himself in his room and doesn't even play with Zen when he comes over to play for a bit. His friend can sense that something is wrong with him, but he refuses to share his feelings with anyone as always. Harold drags Zen out of his bedroom while he continues to ask questions, but it looks like a kid like him is not supposed to talk back. Finally alone, Harold realizes that he said some harsh words to Erica to make her leave, but he might have gone a little overboard. Maybe he should have taken it down a notch or two, taking her illness into consideration as well. He is evidently feeling too bad for projecting himself in such a negative light. However, he is also aware that he needs to maintain this nature without hesitating because this is exactly what he needs to do in the future. If he hesitates now, then it will just keep getting difficult with time. Hirasawa has been restlessly twisting and turning in his bed the entire night. Eventually, he manages to fall asleep and loses track of time. The sun rises to its peak, and the bright light wakes him up. He checks his clock and is shocked to see that he overslept and it is past noon. That slap for Erica yesterday seems to have caused heavy damage, and Hirasawa is still trying to recover. He rubs his face and takes a deep sigh. Everything is going exactly how he planned, so why is he still this bothered? He admits that someone playing the game would have been so happy to see the slap, because Harold did indeed deserve it. But things are different now that he gets to experience everything firsthand. The rumbling from his stomach forces him to leave his bed and head towards the dining room. Norman enters the room and asks his master if he's doing okay, given that he overslept and looks extremely fatigued. However, Hirasawa doesn't waste any time talking about himself, and gets straight to talking ooga booga about his business strategies. He discusses with Norman the means of spreading the LP farming method, like recruiting people from outside and increasing the workforce. His other idea is to demonstrate the benefits of the LP farming method to some merchants, and then sign a contract with them for its rights. His plan is simple. He wants to force merchants into buying the LP farming method, and then the merchants will resell it to farmers. The farmers will pay the contract fees to the merchants and use the LP farming method, and then the profits will be split between the inventor and the merchants. However, to secure talented merchants that they can use to come into contact with the farmers, they can't expect much from relying on a big company. Norman comments that they don't have any connections, so no company would pay attention to them if they were to suddenly make a proposal. Hirasawa sighs and agrees that even though his, Harold, parents have connections, they can't disclose their LP farming plan to them. Norman notices the look of frustration on Hirasawa's face, and reassures him that their plan will reach fruition. They just have to get into contact with trustworthy merchants, and for that, they will share their plan with Jake. Hirasawa nods his head and agrees to this course of action. Later that day, Zen spends at least 5 minutes knocking on Harold's door, but receives no response. He becomes concerned, so he enters the room without permission. It turns out, he really isn't in his room. It looks like Zen is quite attached to Harold, because he tries to get up earlier just so he can spend some moments with Harold-sama. He notices Erika sitting in the living room all by herself. He respectfully greets her and introduces himself. When asked why she isn't with Yuno today, Erika replies that she has gone out of town for a personal matter. Zen, like always, finds it impossible to mind his own business. He asks her if she decided to stay because she has some business with Harold. At hearing his name, the smile on Erika's face fades away. Zen is too dumb to take a hint, so he keeps on yapping about how he's worried about Harold overworking himself by constantly being busy lately. Erika doesn't respond and keeps glaring at him. After a couple of minutes, Zen eventually asks her if there is something wrong. Erika hesitates at first, but musters up the courage to ask him if the reason why he thinks so highly of Harold is because he's not aware that Harold used magic to murder a servant. Zen is caught off guard by that question. He scratches his head and stutters. He tells her that there are only rumors, and since they can't be sure whether those rumors are true, they shouldn't jump to conclusions like that. Erika raises her voice and states that Harold confirmed the rumors himself. She asks him how he could be so careless about the matter when it all happened in his presence. Zen freezes in his place when he realizes that he has yet again messed up. Erika takes a short pause and then asks him how she can blindly follow Harold like him. Her conscience would never allow her to accept Harold and forgive him after he has killed a human. He admits that even though she is his fiancée and wants to help her people for her father's sake, this is something that she can't overlook. As she says that, Harold has made her let go of only one option of becoming useful to the Sumeragi family. Tears start dripping from his eyes. She eventually gives in to her emotions and yells that the only thing on her mind is that she cannot bring herself to forgive him no matter what. Zen is like a deer in headlights. He is unable to speak or move. Eventually, Erika calms down and apologizes for showing unprofessional behavior despite being ignoble. She wipes her face and leaves the place. Zen just stands there and thinks about how similar Erika and Harold are. Harold saved the woman and her child, despite bearing the dishonor of being a murderer, whereas Erika is trying to swallow her true feelings for the sake of the Sumeragi people. Zen concludes that, given their similarities, there is no way these two should be allowed to go their separate ways while hating each other. Yet again, in his best attempt to help Harold, he is only going to mess up his plans. He believes that since these two possess the same strength and kindness, they should be able to show their true selves and support each other. Zen decides to let his intrusive thoughts win and he stops Erika. He requests her to follow him. Erika is as confused as us. In his inner monologue, he apologizes to Harold for what he's about to do. He claims that he's afraid that one day he will shatter into pieces and that he cannot tolerate such a sight. He clenches his fist and decides to go against his orders. He knows that he might lose Harold forever, but he is ready to accept that if it means getting rid of some of the thorns in Harold's path. He's decided that Harold absolutely needs Erika. His plan is basically to drag the girl to Harold's room and then lock it from the outside. He smiles mischievously as he executes his plan. He apologizes to Erika and promises her that he will be back in 5 minutes. Little did he know that he does not have even 5 minutes to carry out his plan. Harold casually passes Zen and opens the door to his room. Thankfully, Harold is clueless about the situation and asks Zen what he's doing outside of his room. Zen quickly takes his defensive stance as Harold looks like a furious cat that hasn't been fed. Apparently, Erika has managed to hide in Harold's closet, and her heart is throbbing like crazy as it will break out of her rib cage any time. Zen has pushed her into an embarrassing situation and escape seems impossible. Zen asks Harold where he has been all this time and the latter replies that he was simply eating in the dining room. Harold seems annoyed, so Zen cuts to the chase and asks him if he knows that the rumors of Clara have been spreading quite far. He claims that he went to the town shop earlier and all the shopkeepers and customers pestered him all about it. The conversation has piqued Erica's interest and she listens carefully. Zen continues by saying that he has not revealed anything to anybody, but this can take a shot at Harold's reputation. Harold takes a deep breath and says that the way Zen was panicking earlier, he thought he might have something important to say. Harold states that he does not consider this matter to be important because there is nothing that he can do about it. Zen already knows the answers to all the questions and he's not as stupid as we might think. He still asks Harold what the issue is and Harold finally reveals that he cannot announce to the public that Clara and Colette actually safely escaped to Blush Village and are still alive. The time stops momentarily for Erica and she realizes how judgmental she has been without even having any evidence. Harold adds that if by any chance his parents were to catch the wind of Clara being alive, he would become suspicious in their eyes. Zen asks the main question now. He asks her why he isn't willing to reveal the truth to his fiancée who seems incredibly depressed over these rumors. Without wasting a second, Harold sharply responds that Erica must never find out. We know that the real reason is to avoid death flags while sticking to Harold's original storyline. Hirasawa decides to make up some reason because he knows that otherwise, Zen's kindness could lead to his downfall. Little does he know, Zen is 5 steps ahead of him. Harold states that since Erica started crying, after assuring that he had killed them, she is just going to be a liability for him. He claims that he doesn't want someone who sheds tears and sympathy for people who they don't even know. He says that her kind personality is a weakness because if she were to walk beside him, she would always be hurt. Zen tries his best to save the situation and asks him if he is deliberately keeping her at a distance because he is worried about her. He states that there is no way he would get married to some annoying girl who cries at literally everything. Zen refuses to give up just yet. He asks him the point of the entire engagement thing if marriage is not an option. Harold calls Zen a numbskull and explains that the engagement was bought with money. He then narrates how the miasma plagues the forest which was pivotal to the Sumeragai's economy. Obviously, Hiroshima knows all these facts because he played the game. He knows that Harold's parents did not think twice about agreeing to the arrangement because they were desperate for their bloodline. Zen scratches his head and tries to use his brain cells that are already on life support. He asks Harold if it's okay with the Sumeragai family being utterly destroyed as a result of him breaking the engagement. Harold smiles and reveals that he has already taken measures to take care of that. When he visited the Sumeragai territory, he passed a letter to Tasuku through Erica. In the letter, he described a method to manufacture an antibody that is effective against the miasma. He also informed him about the necessary precautions. If the region is only lightly contaminated by the miasma, they can use the drug to possibly return their forest industry to normal. Along with that, he also plans to offer them the LP farming method technique. The surprising part for Erica is when Harold mentions that he talked about it in the letter too. As long as the antibody and the LP farming work out, Erica's family won't suffer from breaking off of the engagement. Now, the question is Erica fine with it? Zen's action has changed everything, but Hirasawa is not aware of that. With a devilish grin on his face, Harold advises Zen to sort out his future too because the Stokes family is headed towards a downfall. If he doesn't want to be unemployed, Harold suggests he should prepare for the worst-case scenario. This is because the heavy taxation and the excessive spending are getting out of hand now. Hirasawa starts to panic when he realizes that Harold has not given any thought to the Stokes citizens. Harold scoffs arrogantly. Of course, his plan covers everything. He has made sure nothing bad would happen to the citizens by requesting Sumeragai to take care of them if the Stokes were to fall. Tasuku is connected with the royal family, so he will act as a liaison for their support, to put in good words whenever possible. After finishing the entire story, he gives Zen a death stare and promises to kill him if he ever let words gets out. Zen sweats from head to toe while nodding his head. His eyes keep shifting towards the closet. Harold commands him to scram, but Zen has a knack for being annoying. He comes up with a great excuse to drag him out of his room so Erica can escape. Zen tells Harold that he has always had an interest in swordsmanship, so he would like to see him train. Harold refuses at first, but then realizes that he can use Zen to improve his skills. The typical devilish smile crawls on his face as he hands Zen a sword and tells him to run as fast as he can. As soon as the duo leaves the room, Erica comes out and finally breathes peacefully. She rushes towards her room while Harold's words float in his mind. She keeps thinking about Clara and Colette, tears of happiness well up in her eyes knowing that those two are safe. However, she decides that she wants to confirm this information and tells everything to Yuno.